You are now listening to Protecting Your Nest with board-certified family medicine and obesity medicine specialist Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com. Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. Today we will talk about something we all need and something that most of us need more of, and that's sleep. And since we spend about 1/3 of our lives sleeping, it would be logical to make sure that time is spent well, learning how to get the best quality sleep possible. That's why today I wanted a sleep expert to add to our knowledge about sleep, because I think that experts are people we can rely on and trust as we attempt to protect our nest. Today's guest is Devin Burke. Devin is a sleep expert who helps high achievers get and stay asleep so they can wake up with more peace, power, and presence. He is an international and a TEDx speaker, and he is the best-selling author of Sleep Advantage and the founder of Sleep Science Academy. His books, keynote programs, and videos have inspired thousands of people to improve their sleep, energy, and life. His mission is to give 40 million people who suffer from poor sleep the tools and support they'll need to stop suffering and start sleeping as quickly as possible. And with that, Devin, I really want to welcome you to the Protecting Your Nest podcast.
Dr. Hampton, thanks for having me to share and talk about this very important topic. Appreciate it.
And sleep is so important. And I know as we kind of touch base, we started a few minutes late because I was literally trying to get to the home office. And I tell you, imagine if I hadn't gotten enough sleep, right?
Yes.
And we're so busy. And it's so important that no matter if you're a high achiever, you're trying to become one, that you figure out sleep. So let's start by talking about yourself, and in particular, why has sleep become the focus of your day-to-day life?
Yeah, so I'll give you the short version of a long story. I was working with a lot of high-performing entrepreneurs in a different capacity, more of a health mindset life coach. And these people were running companies, families. They were going from next. It was nonstop. Probably like yourself, you're shaking your head. A lot of people listen to this. And as you can imagine, a lot of them had sleep issues. And one in particular, I started to just notice that this was an issue. And one in particular client had really bad sleep issues, and it was affecting him in a big way. And he said, "Hey, what do you know about sleep? And you studied all these different things." And honestly, I said, "I don't know that much, to be honest. I sleep great." So I said, "But give me a little bit of time. Let me look and see what's available, how you can get the support." And what I found was I was shocked. One, I found sleeping medications, which they have side effects. I'm not anti-medication by any means. There's a time and a place, but I was shocked that I couldn't find other solutions for this particular person. And then when I started to really dive into the science of sleep, I realized it's the foundation of health. And here I studied nutrition and exercise physiology and all these different things, psychologies. And I just never thought really that much about sleep. I honestly thought it was a waste of time. And so once I discovered how impactful sleep is and what happens when we do get great sleep and what happens when we don't get great sleep, that really just set me on a path to continue to learn more. And that was about 6 years ago that I've been on this journey. Yeah.
I wouldn't say I've mastered sleep, but I'll definitely say I'm much better at it. I prioritize sleep. And, there was a time when I thought I had to drink coffee just to feel energized in the morning. And one day, but I had an irritable bowel problem. So I was like, you know what? This coffee is probably bothering me. Let me take a break from the coffee. But at the same time, when I took a break, I said, let's get on a consistent sleep schedule. And what I discovered is that if I get enough sleep, then I don't need the coffee.
That's right. That's right.
Isn't that crazy? So that was a great discovery, and definitely I encourage anybody to do that experiment. So, but I do want my audience to understand the difference between sleep and rest. So, Could you share the difference, because I know there is a difference?
Absolutely, there's a difference. So, rest can be passive or active, and sleep is passive. So rest comes in a lot of different forms. There's physical rest, there's mental rest, emotional rest, sensory rest, creative rest. There's a lot of different ways that we can rest. And some of them are passive and some of them are active, but sleep is passive. So some examples of rest could look like getting a massage. Rest could look like stretching. Rest could look like, staying away from screens and de-stimulating your environment. Anything that's going to help you get back into the parasympathetic nervous system response for a sustained period of time, we can consider that rest. Sleep, on the other hand, it's passive. We're not conscious when we sleep. So yes, we come in and out of consciousness, and there's different stages of sleep. But for the most part, we're pretty much checked out. But that doesn't mean that there's not a lot happening while we're checked out.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So, um, I definitely think about. There was a time when people said that even if your eyes are, like, just say you're trying to nap, you can't nap, and you just close your eyes and you're just sitting there. That sounds like more like rest, but I'm assuming that's also beneficial, even if you can't get into a deep sleep. Is that true?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Now, you don't want to really, if you're having issues with your sleep, I wouldn't recommend you do that in your bed. I would recommend you do that someplace else, because we don't want to anchor, the bed with wakefulness. The bed's really, in the bedroom, is designed for two things: sleep and making love to your bed partner. That's it.
That's
But rest is so important. Most people, most of the time, are in a rest deficit, and then they wonder why they can't sleep. It's because they don't have enough rest. So if you're in a
mm,
rest deficit, your body is in a state of stress, and stress and sleep are bidirectionally linked. So the more stress you experience, the less rest you experience, and the less rest you experience, the more stress you experience. So it's this loop that a lot of people find themselves on. And at Sleep Science Academy, it's a real focus for us to help people to prioritize rest and find ways to understand what type of rest they need.
all right, cool. So when it comes to a lot of people in the audience, they now understand the difference between sleep and rest. So the question is, why are so many people struggling with sleep? Why is it such a big issue in our country?
Yeah, I mean that's the $1 million question. And I think it's twofold, actually threefold. One, it's stigmatized as a waste of time. It's seen as a weak habit of low performers. You snooze, you lose. Sleep when you're dead. So it has this really sort of bad has a bad rap. Most people, so there's the culture aspect of that, and then there's the technological aspect, where technology has invaded our bedrooms, it's invaded every part of our lives, and it's disturbing our sleep. We're spending more time on our devices, especially late at night, watching Netflix and answering emails and text messages. And then there's the stress. More people now are more stressed because of the modern world that we live in. And so the world's moving faster, and it's people are trying to keep up, and it's stressful, and there's a lot of stimulation, and that leads right directly to sleep issues.
Yeah, and I think it's so important. Like, my whole theme for my podcast is, why do we get sick? What's the root cause? And that's, we're trying to learn how to protect our nest to do that. And one of the S's in the nest acronym is for sleep, because I feel that it's one of the foundations of good health. So from your perspective, why is sleep so foundational for good health?
Yeah, so I'll start here. So if we look at the important aspects of health, it's air. We last a couple minutes without air, then water, a couple days without water. The next most important thing in that line is sleep. Then it's food. Then it's movement.
Mm,
So most people, when they think about their health, they think about changing my diet and moving my body, which are absolutely important, play a big role into sleep. But when we're looking at it from that sort of just pragmatic standpoint of what is most important, from air to movement, sleep is before exercise and movement when it comes to needing it. And the reason is because sleep affects every important aspect of our life, starting with our physical health and longevity. So when you're in a rest deficit and you're in a sleep deficit, you increase your risk of every single major disease, whether it's cardiovascular disease, whether it's diabetes, whether it's Alzheimer's, any major disease. When you are not getting sufficient sleep, and we can talk about what sufficient sleep is, you are increasing your risk. So the shorter you sleep, the shorter you live. So that's from, and the reason is because it's during the night when our bodies and our brains repair and recover. It's during the night when the lymph system, it's like the lymph system for the brain, washes out the beta amyloid, the tau, the plaque that builds up that creates Alzheimer's. We all have cancerous cells in our bodies. It's during the night the immune system is most active, and it's cleaning up the damage. Autophagy is happening. And so it's so important for our physical longevity and health. And it's also so important for our mental health. It's
Yeah.
critical for our mental health. I mean, if you, I believe, and one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this topic is if more people got the sleep that they needed, the world would be a better place. People would be less irritable. They'd be less angry. They'd be more patient. Like, can you, like, sometimes I play this little game. I imagine a world where everyone got the sleep that they need. How much better would it be? And so that's really what drives me. But I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole and talk about all these intricacies, but it affects every area of our life.
Yeah, my job as a doctor, I'm much better when I'm not at the clinic tired. I can focus. I can hear patients. I'm more patient. I'm nicer to my team members. I'm more present, and just as importantly, I'm not falling asleep on my way home. So it makes things safer, and everything you're saying makes sense. And I think people just don't think about it, and I think people just they think being tired is normal. They just get used to it, right? And that's the
Yeah.
problem. So when it comes to like being better at this, since we're talking about, how to improve, want to sleep, get to sleep faster. I want to, rest better. I want to wake up not feeling tired. Give us some thoughts on how we can do that.
Yeah. So the way that I look at this is there's three primary areas that you got to look at. It's the psychology, it's the physiology, and it's the environment. Most people, they do it backwards. They address the environment, then they address the physiology, then the psychology. At Sleep Science Academy, we go psychology, physiology, environment.
Hmm.
And so the first important aspect for people to understand is if you are running around crazy, stressed, then your body is not going to get into the deeper stages of sleep, and you're probably going to have issues falling asleep or staying asleep. So stress, mental, emotional stress is the biggest factor, is the biggest lever to pull to understand, well, how can I reduce my stress? How can I implement healthier ways of managing my stress throughout the day? How can I create space, have breaks, practice self-care so that you're not carrying your day into your night? And so, we're big believers at Sleep Science Academy in mindfulness practices, creating awareness of your thoughts, your emotions, increasing your emotional intelligence, being able to really understand the stories you tell yourself and how those stories release cortisol and adrenaline, and also being able to shift them or reframe them, or look at them in a different way, gain perspective. So that's really where we start with people, is giving them those tools. And then we look at the physiology. We look at, okay, well, how can we improve your physical health? How can we
Hmm.
have your circadian rhythm be in harmony so that it's not chaotic, and it's not, you're going to bed at different times, you're not seeing the sun enough. Most of us spend way too much time indoors behind screens, and it throws off our biorhythms.
Hmm.
So doing things to bring the biorhythm back in harmony is really where we focus on the physiology. And that could look like getting outside and seeing the sun rise, seeing it set. That could look like moving your body. That could look like changing your diet. That could look like, changing the time that you eat foods,
Hmm.
because timing is also important when we're talking about sleep optimization. Um, and so, I don't want to overwhelm people because there is a lot here, but
Yeah.
yeah, so those are some things. And then the environment, and this is really lowest hanging fruit. It's making sure that your room is cold, dark, and quiet,
Hmm.
making sure that you have a routine and a ritual, a wind down routine. We call this sleep hygiene. Uh, it's just, creating a space, a sanctuary. Your bed and bedroom
Hmm.
should be a sanctuary, because it makes a difference. If you have a lot of light or a lot of noise pollution, or if your room's a mess or you don't have a supportive mattress, yeah, it's going to affect your sleep. And so focusing on just making little improvements to optimize your environment go a long way as well.
And I appreciate you, Devin, because one of the things I learned from watching your YouTube channel is this ideal of taking breaks, right? And I remember, man, literally, I did this today. Ironically, it was raining in Chicago the day we recorded this, and I literally just stood by the window for maybe a 2 minute amount of time, waiting for patients to be roomed, and I just enjoyed looking outside into the landscape and just took a moment,
That's
rest my
it.
brain. Normally I'd be, trying to, do a refill or, do a referral or trying to call somebody. Instead, I said, I'm just going to stand here, thanks to you, and just
Ah,
took it. And I don't think I was doing a good job. I think I do a lot of things well because I'm trying to teach wellness and I try to live what I teach. But during the day, it's like a marathon. It's a sprint, and I'm just
yes.
constantly going. And I think there's a lesson to be learned. So I really appreciate this idea of taking a break and pausing just long enough to, kind of settle things down. So, and I know a lot's going on when you're sleeping. So talk a little bit about, everybody kind of has heard the stages of sleep. So kind of review what's going on while you're sleeping.
Yeah, so it's if you're doing it right, you're getting 4 to 5 cycles of sleep, and a cycle of sleep lasts about 90 minutes. And so each stage of sleep is correlated to a different brainwave state. And when we're talking about sleep quality, we're talking about two specific stages of sleep. It's delta sleep or deep sleep, and we're talking, or also known as slow wave sleep, and REM sleep or rapid eye movement. And so in these two very important stages, well, to get to these stages, you have to get through light sleep, right? So you could look at it at stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's one way of looking at it. And so every 90 minutes, we're coming in and out of these different stages of sleep. And what's interesting is if you look at your sleep architecture throughout the night, most of your deep sleep actually happens in the first quarter of the night. And that's when, the glymphatic system that I mentioned earlier is most active. That's when testosterone and growth hormone and all these things are being released. Your body is essentially repairing itself. And then you start to shift into REM sleep. And this is where your body actually, you become paralyzed because the body's so intelligent that it doesn't want you acting out your dreams while you're like fighting a dragon. That wouldn't be good if you were, starting to punch your bed partner in the face, because so your body is literally immobilized. And this is rapid eye movement is the dream stage of sleep. And this is where short-term memory gets shuttled to long-term storage. This is where we're working out the emotional traumas of the day. A lot of times suppressed emotion or repressed emotion gets
Mm-hmm.
expressed through dreams. We actually don't, there's a lot of theories on why we dream and what dreams are, but that no one really knows.
Mm-hmm.
They're just theories. But that REM stage of sleep is when dreaming takes place, and it's a very important stage. And that happens usually in right before the most of that stage of sleep happens right before we wake up. And so
Mm-hmm.
most people, if you think of it like a bookend, they sacrifice the juiciest parts of their night. They're doing things that disturb the deep sleep in the first quarter of the night, if you will, and then they're waking up too early and they're not getting into the juicy REM sleep. So those two kind of going to sleep and then waking up. That's if you bookend your night like that, those are the most important stages of sleep. And then of course we're going in and out of these stages throughout the whole rest of the night.
All right, cool. So I also I think most people think about the impact of stress on sleep, and I know there's a connection. So I want you to speak a little bit about why stress is so important to kind of figure out so you can sleep better. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a stressed body won't sleep. So, I mean, because it's releasing cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline. Now, even if you're not having a full blown anxiety attack, if your body thinks that it's at threat, it's not going to sleep, or it's not going to get the quality of sleep that it needs because it's hyper vigilant. It's hyper aroused. And so this is why it's so important to understand what our stressors are and to learn better ways of managing our stress. And I like to share this framework. Most people, how they manage their stress, they lash out,
Hmm.
they numb out, or they zone out. They lash out in anger, they numb out with food, alcohol, and drugs, or they zone out with sometimes it's work, sometimes it's social media or movies or shopping. That's how most people have learned to manage their stress. And these are all, they're not the healthiest ways of managing stress, which lead to then poor sleep. And then, like I said before, there's that bi-directional link. So if you're not sleeping, your body's going to experience more stress. Your cortisol is going to be higher throughout the rest of the day. And then everything else, it gets compounded. So now you're more stressed than you were the night before. And so you're not sleeping that night. And so on and on this bi-directional sort of pattern goes until you get off the merry-go-round. And how you do that is you stop and really, learn the tools to understand your psychology, and your emotional, what's creating the stress for you.
So a perfect, just one, I would love to get an example, because I think about how some people, things kind of build up, and at the end of the day, you have all of these things going through your
Yes.
head, whether
Yes.
you're trying to be a leader like myself or thinking about, what's going on with the kids or whatever. So you're kind of wrapping up your day, and instead of, kind of toning things down, you're like, oh my God, I got all this stuff to do. And then those
Yes.
people can't sleep. So give us a tip of, what does a person do when they're sitting in the bed? They got 100 things going through their head. And, what do they do to mitigate that? Because that seems like a never ending cycle of poor sleep.
Yeah, and it is. And honestly, that starts as soon as you wake up. So how you manage your entire day is going to dictate if you're not taking those mental breaks, like you mentioned earlier, just kind of 5 minutes looking at the rain, admiring. If you're not taking those little mental rests throughout the day, your mind is going to wind up. I like to give the
Hmm.
analogy. It's like your body's a battery, and it's getting charged all day long, and charged not in a good way. It's like you're picking up these little micro stresses, problem solving, trying to figure out things. It's a form of mental stress, and it speeds the brain up. And the brain needs time to rest. We're not designed to be robots or computers.
Right.
And so most of us treat our live like we're very robotic. We're not human doings, we're human beings. So we need to practice more being during the day. So then you're not so wound up at the end of the day, because by then it's kind of too late. Because now
Hmm.
it's like there are things you can do, right? But it really does start as soon as you wake up. So if, let's say, we all have those days where the shit hits the fan, and we don't have we it's just a tough day and your mind is racing. What you want to do in those moments is, first and foremost, don't try to go to bed if your mind's racing and you're activated. Start writing out your thoughts. Start to practice diaphragmatic breathing. Take
Hmm.
10 deep diaphragmatic breaths to bring yourself back into your body and get yourself out of your head, because most of us, most of the time, are in our heads.
Hmm.
So do things that get you back into your somatic experiencing. This could be stretching, this could be a warm bath, this could be journaling, writing a to-do list, kind of a brain dump. All of these things can be very helpful for a mind that's very busy. And then, just if you can, just drop the problem solving, because that's
Hmm.
usually where the brain is. The brain's trying to figure things out. Hey, what do I need to do? How am I going to solve this? Okay, the brain is constantly, it's problem solving, and there's a space that you can shift to where there's no problems to solve, and that's called the present.
Hmm.
And that takes practice, but with practice you can get to that place.
Yeah, I love the simplicity. I hadn't really thought of it this way. Leave your head and go to your body. Like that makes a ton of sense when I think about yoga and other forms of meditation. It's like okay, take a deep breath. You can feel your stomach. You can, and you only do that when you are able to pause and leave your head. And that's a great way of thinking about it. And I love this idea of writing your thoughts down, because it does probably slow you down a little bit. But most importantly, I think you have to write your thoughts down, from what I'm understanding, without trying to solve what you're trying to write down. It's almost like having a to-do list without saying how you're going to do the to-do list. And
Exactly.
that makes sense. And it's like it's just a different way of framing that. So clearly stress is an issue. My NEST acronym, is nutrition, exercise, less stress, more sleep, how we think, and recovering from trauma. So when you think about some of those other elements, rather it's the exercise, nutrition, our thoughts, in terms of getting quality sleep, how important are those other elements in order to make this sleep thing work?
Oh my gosh, they are so important. They all affect sleep and
Yeah.
in different ways.
Yeah.
So we can start just with some low, simple hanging fruit. So I teach this thing. It's really easy to remember. It's called 3-2-1 sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so 3 hours before bed, you stop eating because you don't want to be digesting your food while your body's trying to remove the cancerous cells in that deeper stage of sleep where the
Mm-hmm.
lymph system's activated, all the good things in delta sleep. And then 2 hours before bed, no work. And the reason we
Mm-hmm.
do that is going to your acronym here, we're talking about your thoughts, is because the brain doesn't just shut down, it needs space. And if you're working, even an hour up until bed, you're going to carry some of those thoughts with
Mm-hmm.
you to bed. And then 1 hour before bed, that's when you start your bedtime ritual. And this can look like some light movement, making love to your bed partner. This could look
Mm-hmm.
like a brain dump. This could look like meditating, a puzzle, reading some type of, not stimulating. I like to read spiritual books. If you're a Christian, the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita or whatever it is, something that's soothing. That when you read it, it just kind of like it connects you to something beyond yourself. That's a great practice versus watching the news, which is what most people do. And that's stress inducing. You're seeing all the worst things, and all night long, now you're thinking about the
Mm-hmm.
killings and the political, circus and all this stuff. And that's stressful. So do yourself a favor and just give yourself at least an hour just to do something for yourself that will be relaxing and prepare your body for sleep.
I love the simplicity of that, and I hope I have some patience watching this episode. I'm always fussing about not watching the news. I'm in Chicago, and it's always been on the news as one of the places where the crime is high. And so the three is really cool because I've already done that. Try to stop eating. You got to digest your food, and it's work, right? Now, the two is tough because I'm a doctor, so stop working. Are you kidding? So that's
Yeah.
going to be the for all my clinical colleagues. Good luck with that one, but that's the one we have to probably work on. I like the ritual part. I've already done that as well. So I just think that we're all working towards a better state, and we have to kind of figure out where we have gaps. And I think for me, it'll be number two. For a lot of my patients, is really just not watching. The ritual of watching the news at the end of the day is just a disaster. So we got to watch some Andy Griffin or something other.
Yeah.
watch
Yes.
watch that instead.
Yes. Yes.
Now, so let's talk a little bit about like I have a rope, right? So it's relationships, avoiding organisms and pollutants, right? So there's got to be some things that we do, whether it's our diet or some other toxins or things that are not good for us, we should avoid if we want quality sleep. Talk a little bit about some of the things people should be thinking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, really at the end of the day, what's good for your health is good for your sleep.
Yeah.
And so by really like for most people, the biggest source of stress is either their work or their relationships, right? So, and this is always really interesting. Sometimes people think they make sleep a problem, and I always say sleep is not the problem. Sleep's a result.
Mm.
And oftentimes, when we start to really understand that and look at, well, what might be the problem? It's, the relationship. It's, I'm irritable, or I need to spend more time with my significant other or work through some of that. And interestingly enough, when you have a relationship issue, you're not going to be able to sleep because it's emotionally impactful. And then when you're not sleeping, a lot of studies show, and you don't need the studies, everyone knows from personal experience, you show up and you're just not yourself. You're not present. You're not your partner can't feel that presence. You're more irritable and on edge, right? And so sleep has a tremendous impact on our relationships, and our relationships have a tremendous impact on our sleep. Also, loneliness there's a huge connection between being disconnected, meaning disconnected, feeling disconnected from a social network or family or friends, and sleep issues. So
Mhm.
if you're somebody that is feeling lonely, is feeling disconnected, get yourself involved in something. Pick up the phone and call a friend. Like get engaged with life so that you can fill that bucket and watch how that impacts your sleep. I've seen it time and again when our clients they really discover, oh wow, there's a gap in my physical connection
Mhm.
and social connection, and they fill that gap. They start sleeping better. Um, so there's that. And then as far as pollutants go, I mean, yes, there's a ton of things like mold and mercury and aluminum and all the things in our air and our food and our water. And if you can just start, you don't have to go crazy, but if you could start by using natural products, buying organic food, if you can afford it, um, and just doing things to mitigate that exposure, it's gonna make a difference over time. Um, so I'm not sure. I know we hit on the relationships and the organisms, and
Yeah.
that
But I think those are the main thing
okay,
because I think that's where I was going with that question, and I like mitigate that word mitigate because you'll make yourself sick trying to think of all the things that can harm you, right?
yes,
I'm still struggling. Like not struggling, but I haven't gotten a water filtration thing installed yet. So I'm trying to get rid of plastic. I'm not there yet. And what I
okay,
tell people is, but what else have you done up to this point? Maybe you start with nutrition, sleep, exercise, and then we can start thinking about all these other things. But
yes,
don't stress out because you haven't done something, because you're going to be surrounded by toxic environments, whether it's the air or the water or
that's right.
whatever. The key is, am I moving away from the things that can harm me? And you don't have to get rid of all of them, because if you create a healthy body, you're going to be able to, your body's constantly fighting cancer and other things 24/7.
Yes,
So just give it
yes,
a proper environment. Some people though want the quick fix. So I really try to get people to focus on nutrition, but I also know that supplements help. So what's
yeah,
your theory? What's your thoughts about food versus supplements as it relates to sleep?
yeah. I mean, so there's a whole chapter in the Sleep Advantage on sleep supplementation, and what it comes down to is understanding, number one, your personal health history. And I always recommend people get their blood work done and see, are you deficient in, the most common ones are magnesium and vitamin D,
Yeah,
right? You probably see this all day in
all
your
it,
office.
no doubt.
So making sure that if you're low on those very important vitamins and minerals, you want to make sure that that can affect sleep for sure. So
Yeah,
making sure that you're either supplementing or eating foods that contain those important nutrients. I think it's always best if you can get your nutrients from food, but unfortunately, most of our food, even the organic stuff's depleted. Um,
that's right.
so so getting a high quality supplement, and this is what I think most people really don't understand, is the quality of the supplement makes all the difference.
Hmm.
So you got to make sure, there's a lot of companies that do it right and even more that do it wrong. You got to make sure that you're getting good quality supplements. And how you know you're getting good quality supplements is, number one, it's from a reputable source. And number two, you can see it in your blood work and you can feel it.
Right.
So it's really those. And then as far as specific sleep supplements, I mean, there's so many. One big one, Doc, that I love right now is actually kava. And
Hmm.
kava is from the Polynesian islands. They use it in rituals. It's a natural sedative, and it's you when you get a really good form of kava. And there's this company called Kava Plex. I'm not affiliated with them, but it's a great product. Um, it acts as a natural sedative, and it works on the GABA system. And what
Hmm.
most people take, they're taking things that deplete medications that deplete the GABA system
Mm.
in order to sleep. And what kava does, it replenishes the GABA system. It actually rebuilds the GABA system in the brain, and has a reverse tolerance. So the
Hmm.
more you take, the less you need to take. Versus
Okay.
like alcohol, which most people use as a sedative, which really isn't good for our sleep. The more you drink it, the more you need to drink. Kava actually
Right.
has the opposite effect. Um, And so that's one really great supplement that I'm a big fan of. And then there's amino acids like 5-HTP and L-theanine, and there's all kinds of. Sometimes people take melatonin. I'm not a huge bigger believer in melatonin,
Yeah.
but it's because the meta-analysis shows that it doesn't really help sleep. It can be a good antioxidant,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a hormone.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And so the thing is, it's you don't for me, it's not like you're going to be popping hormone pills. At least you shouldn't be without your doctor's recommend. So it's like in melatonin, you go down the street and you could just buy it, and there's large amounts of it in these sleep supplements. And I wouldn't roll the dice on that one. And plus,
Yeah.
the science shows that it's not really that effective.
Right, that's fair. And that's why I put on some, blue light blocking glasses at the end of the day. I'm trying to get my body to do its own melatonin as much as possible. And
Yes.
my wife thinks I look really cool with my little shades on at the end of the day, but that's what I do, man. It makes a difference. I do feel different. I remember I had a previous guest, the sleep doctor, I think he calls himself, and he talked about chronotypes, and I know you talk about biorhythms, and I want you to
Yeah.
just kind of explain what that is because people may hear those terms.
Yeah, so Dr. Michael Bruce, great,
Yes,
great guy. Yeah, he has his book, The Power of When, and he talks about the chronotypes.
that's
Great
right.
book.
Yep.
Yeah, so really, just I like to keep things really simple for people because that way it's easy to remember. So essentially, your chronotype, you can think of it as your genetic sleep makeup. So we all come into this world. Some of us are more like night owls. Some of us are more like morning larks, and then some of us are somewhere in between. And you can take, there's an MEQ quiz. We actually have one on our website as well, where you can take the quiz to kind of figure out what your natural biorhythm is, and then if you can. And sometimes this is challenging for people because based off of their schedule, it's hard to sort of honor that, but if you can get in sync with your natural biorhythms, meaning like if you're more of a night type person and
Hmm.
you can go to bed a little bit later and then wake up a little bit later, that would be like your ideal situation because your genetics are actually, that's what your genetics want. But sometimes it's just, our modern lifestyle doesn't really allow for that. But yeah, so that's what chronobiology is. And people ask, well, hey, can I change my chronotype? I want to be a morning person. And
Right.
but unfortunately, you can, but you're going against nature, and
Right.
it's not sustainable. So I'm a big believer in getting back to nature and just working with what nature has provided.
That's right. Well, one thing that nature hasn't provided are these tracking devices. So a lot of people are using tracking devices, and or Oura Ring being one of them.
Yes. Yes.
So, what's your thoughts on using those devices? I'm a doctor, so I like data. So, anytime I can get data is good. But what's your thoughts? Is it really worth the effort to get those?
Doc, I do think it is worth the effort because
Okay.
here's the reason: you can't manage or you can't master what you don't measure.
Mm,
So just like you would get a blood test to see where your cholesterol is, and then maybe change your diet or start exercising or maybe go on some medication, and then when you have that data tells a story, and you can start to see how implementing these behavioral and psychological changes, how that impacts that story, and that
hmm.
creates motivation and momentum. And so I don't think that everyone needs to go buy an Oura Ring. But if we at Sleep Science Academy, we have all our clients use them, and they find it very helpful because they can see when they're making these psychological, physiological, environmental changes, they can see the impact on their amount and the quality of their sleep. Now, are they 100% accurate? No, they're not. Are they
Hmm.
getting better? Yes. But really, it doesn't matter because you're looking for something that's consistent. And so, whether it's an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or a Whoop strap or any kind of device, that's just it's you can start to see, hey, I did this, and that's how it changed things. And then you can start to, even more importantly, you can start to feel that difference. So the challenge is, though, sometimes people track their sleep and they don't know what to do with the data. So
Hmm.
they're on their watch and their Apple Watch, and they're saying, "Oh, well, you slept like crap again." Okay, well, what do I do?
Right.
Right? And so this is obviously where you want to seek support from a professional to help you make sense of that story and give you a plan and the support to uh, to improve your sleep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the last questions I want to ask you reminds me of a book I kind of forced my kids to read, which is the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by
Uh,
Covey, right? One of my favorite books. And they still quote from that book, which is amazing as they're like 23 and 25 now. But so in that book, he talks about the seventh habit being sharpening the saw. And he uses the example of trying to cut that tree down with a rusty saw. And how about if we just pause and sharpen it, right? so so ultimately this reminds me of us needing to pause to become better sleepers, right? So I think if you were to leave a message to my listeners today, could you share why it's so important that we pause and learn how to improve our quality of sleep so we can be more effective, highly effective people, if you want to
yes.
quote Covey?
Yes. So, well, I can say this: every aspect of your life will improve. Every aspect of your life, and it'll become real when you actually do the work to have better sleep. You'll notice it. And like you talked about earlier, Doc, it's it becomes our tired becomes our normal,
Hmm.
and there is something on the other side of that tired that's extraordinary, and the bridge to get there is sleep.
Yeah. I think that's it. And again, I can tell you, I did master sleep until 2 or 3 years ago. I didn't really get consistent with exercise until about 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm a different person. In fact, if I come to clinic and I don't have energy, my patients are like, "What's wrong with you?"
Mm,
They're just accustomed to seeing an energized Dr. Hampton as
yeah.
opposed to a guy. And the irony is that at 54, I have more energy than I had when I was a younger doctor. And some of those patients who've been with me for a while, like, man, you're not the same guy. You seemed always tired in the past and overworked,
Wow.
and now, and I'm probably working harder now, and yet they see the difference. So I really appreciate the work you're doing, Dr. Michael Bruce. Shout out to him and the work he's doing in the field of sleep. So having said that, we want to make sure Devin's okay too. So as it relates to protecting your nest, what are you going to be doing over the next 12 months so that you can be more effective in the work you're doing?
Uh, I want to acknowledge you for just living and walking the talk, because that's the best. You're the best example for all your people, clients. I mean, it really is
Yeah.
that's the ripple right there. So what the next 12 months looks like for me is really just practicing more of what I teach people. I mean, it's like everyone else, I fall off the wagon from time to time. So it's getting back on and continuing to stay consistent with these habits and these routines, and also creating the space to really deepen the rest, getting more massages, like really prioritizing and protecting. Like I asked myself this question the other day. It's like, how much of the things in my day are related to building my business or serving other people versus just creating the space for myself? And most of my day is spent, probably much like yours, supporting other people.
Hmm.
And so I do, support myself, but it's like, sometimes when you deepen that well, then you're able to support people even at another level, which is what you just described. So that's kind of what I'm going to be focusing on in the next year here.
Absolutely. I love that and appreciate that. And we definitely want you to do that. And we also want to make sure for those who are just getting a taste of you, just a little taste of what you can share, let's make sure they know how to get to your book and also the other services that your organization provides.
Yeah. So the Sleep Advantage is on. It's on Audible if you want to listen to it. It's also on Amazon, the paperback. And then for those of you that have real sleep issues and you feel like you've tried everything and nothing's worked, you can, visit Sleep Science Academy. We'll give you a free consult and see if we might be able to help you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Devin. And again, appreciate you. We both kind of slid this in between other busy things. And I'm really happy we got it done. And I'm just excited to continue to meet great people, thought leaders like yourself who are really making a difference. So continue to do what you're doing. I promise I'm going to do the same. And thank you so much for being on the Protecting Your Nest podcast.
Thanks for having me, Doc. Appreciate
All
you.
right. All right, guys, Devin reminded us today of the importance that sleep plays in our ability to achieve metabolic health. My hope today is that after hearing this conversation, a few more people are going to have the knowledge and motivation to prioritize sleep, which is so foundational in order for us to thrive. So make sure to share this episode with anybody you feel would benefit from learning more about sleep. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, maybe throw a comment in there. If you're on YouTube, maybe put a comment down there in terms of how you're dealing with sleep and maybe what you enjoyed about today's episode. So I thank you again for being here with me and Devin today. And until the next episode of the Protecting Your Nest podcast, continue to be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest. You've been listening to Protecting Your Nest with Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com.